chasing Mr. Big. From the time she was a teenager, Maya carried a dream that burned brighter than any fairy tale. She was American, born and raised in Chicago, but her heart was restless always, hungry for something that went beyond the ordinary. Love stories she saw in movies or heard from her friends. For her, love wasn't just about companionship. It wasn't just about finding a man who could hold her hand at dinners or pose in Instagram-worthy vacation pictures. Maya believed in something far deeper. She believed in true love, the kind that shook the ground beneath your feet, the kind that fused two souls into one life. To her, that love had to be equal parts emotional, intellectual, and physical. Sex matters, she often told herself, not in the shallow way her college friends sometimes laughed about it, comparing positions, joking about one-night stands, or rating men like they were Yelp reviews. For Maya, sex was the hidden core of intimacy. A language. A truth. She wanted a man who understood that giving and receiving pleasure wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. A man who saw her body not as a playground but as a temple. And in that temple, her deepest secret desire was clear. She loved being worshipped through cunnilingus. It wasn't about kink or some fetish to her. It was about surrender. It was about a man who would put her pleasure first, who would understand that her orgasm was not a side note, but the very heart of their connection. That was how she could trust him, how she could feel love fully, without holding back. Yet Maya wasn't naive. She knew people came with flaws, contradictions, and messy pasts. She wasn't searching for perfection. She wanted compatibility. A man whose character matched hers, whose mind could challenge hers, whose worldview aligned enough to build a future together. Someone who could accept her quirks, her impatience, her stubborn streak, and someone whose flaws she could embrace in return. We don't have to be the same, she thought, but we have to be together. The dream had carried her through high school crushes, college flings, and post-grad experiments in dating apps. Every time she met someone new, she measured them against this vision of Mr. Big, her shorthand for the man who would one day prove worthy of her heart and body. In quiet moments, Maya would imagine it, the way he'd look at her across a room, like no one else existed. The first time he'd undress her slowly, carefully, not rushing to his own pleasure but savoring hers. The first time his mouth would trail down her body and linger at the one place that made her feel seen, worshipped, and alive. It wasn't just about sex. It was about validation, about knowing she was understood in the deepest way possible. And so, she made herself a promise. She would never marry for convenience. She would never settle just because her friends were getting engaged. She would never say yes to someone who didn't make her body, mind, and soul come alive. She would wait no matter how long it took for the one, her Mr. Big. Dating in America was supposed to be fun, or so everyone told Maya. Her friends insisted she should treat it like an adventure. Swipe, match, laugh, flirt, maybe kiss, maybe more. But for Maya, every date carried the weight of her dream. She wasn't looking for just anyone. She was searching for the man who could be everything. Her first attempts were typical. Coffee in Brooklyn cafes, rooftop cocktails in Manhattan, strolls along Navy Pier when she was back visiting Chicago. The men varied, but the outcomes rarely did. The banker was clean-cut. 6-figure job at a Manhattan investment firm. Italian suits and a smile designed to charm clients. At dinner, he talked about deals, about the Hamptons, about his gym routine. When he touched her hand across the table, Maya felt nothing but calculation. Later, when they kissed in the back of his car, she tested the waters of intimacy. He was eager, too eager. His hands moved like he was flipping through a contract. Fast, careless, transactional. When she hinted at her preferences, he chuckled, dismissing it as cute. The artist was the opposite: tattoos, messy hair, lived in a loft filled with canvases and incense smoke. Their first date was intoxicating. He looked at her as though she was a subject for his next masterpiece. Conversation flowed effortlessly, full of philosophy and late-night wanderings through Soho streets. But intimacy revealed another truth. He was passionate, yes, but selfish in bed. He treated sex like a performance, an act for his own climax, not hers. When she gently guided him, trying to show him what she needed, he smirked as though her pleasure was secondary to his artistic energy. Then came the doctor. Handsome, brilliant, grounded. Their dinners were filled with laughter and discussions about books, politics and family. Maya almost convinced herself this could be it. But when the moment came to be vulnerable, he froze. In bed, he was distant. Mechanical, like intimacy was just another duty to perform. He avoided eye contact, moved too quickly. And when she whispered what she longed for, his discomfort was palpable. He couldn't give. He only knew how to finish. And so it went. The comedian who couldn't take anything seriously. The entrepreneur who treated her like an accessory. The sweet Midwestern boy who was perfect on dates, but trembled with inexperience when things turned intimate. Every encounter left her clearer about what she wanted and more impatient. She began to notice a pattern. Men could talk about ambition, about politics, about travel plans. They could shower her with flowers, compliments, promises. But when it came to sex, most faltered. They didn't listen. They didn't explore. They didn't treat her orgasm as essential, as the soul of their connection. For Maya, that was non-negotiable. She would go home after these dates, pour herself a glass of wine, and collapse onto her bed with a sigh. Her friends teased her for being too picky, but she knew better. "I'm not picky," she whispered to herself. "I'm precise." It wasn't that she needed a man who was perfect in every way. She just needed one who understood her, body and soul. Someone who believed, as she did. That mutual satisfaction was the foundation of real love. Sometimes, in those late nights, she would close her eyes and imagine him, the man who would take his time, who would learn every inch of her body, who would revel in her pleasure as though it was his own victory. Her Mr. Big. By her late 20s, Maya had become something of an expert at first dates. She could tell within minutes whether a man was worth a second drink, whether his confidence was genuine or a mask, whether he was curious about her or just filling silence, until he could lean in for a kiss. But what still caught her off guard, what still bruised her heart and body, were the disappointments that came later, in bedrooms and dimly lit apartments. When walls came down and truth revealed itself, the musician wooed her with serenades and late-night whispers about destiny. Their intimacy started with fire, but when it came to her deepest need, he rushed. He brushed past it, moving too quickly to his own release. She tried to guide him, but he grew impatient. The sex ended with his satisfaction and her emptiness. The professor was older, sophisticated, his mind sharp and magnetic. But in bed he was detached, clinical, as though her body was a text to be studied. When she told him what she loved, he dismissed it, calling it not really my thing. And then there was the nice guy. The hardest disappointment of all. He was kind, dependable, almost everything she wanted. But passion never bloomed. His kisses were awkward, his touches unsure, his efforts sweet but fruitless. She gave him time, hoping desire might grow, but it never did. Leaving him broke her heart, not because he was wrong, but because he was almost right. These disappointments left scars, but also clarity. Each man who failed to meet her in bed wasn't just a failed lover, he was a mirror, reflecting back to her what she truly needed. Maya's desire for cunnilingus wasn't just about orgasm. It was about devotion, about a man who loved to linger, who found his pleasure in hers. It was about surrendering and trusting, about being seen and cherished in the rawest form. Without that, she knew, love would never feel complete. Her friends rolled their eyes when she explained it. You can't build a marriage on sex, they'd say. But Maya disagreed. You can't build one without it. She wasn't chasing a fantasy. She was chasing alignment. A man whose mind, heart, and mouth all understood her. Each disappointment made her lonelier, yes, but also stronger. Because somewhere in the ache, she still believed. Her Mr. Big was out there. And when she found him, she would know instantly by the way he looked at her, touched her, and yes, the way he loved her between her thighs. It happened on a night Maya almost didn't go out. She had just ended another lukewarm dater, Lauya, who spent the evening bragging about courtroom victories and barely asked her a single question. By the time she left the restaurant, she was exhausted, her patience worn thin. She swore she'd delete every dating app on her phone when she got home. But then her best friend Lena texted, "Come to this rooftop party in Brooklyn. Don't argue. Just come. Trust me." The rooftop was buzzing with Energy City lights shimmering, music pulsing, laughter spilling into the night air. Maya wandered toward the bar, scanning for Lena. That's when she noticed him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple dark shirt that hugged his frame just right. He wasn't flashy, wasn't trying too hard, but the way he stood relaxed, confident, observing instead of performing caught her attention immediately. Their eyes met across the crowd, and in that instant, the noise of the rooftop faded. He didn't just look at her, he saw her, like she was the reason he'd come that night too. A few minutes later, Lena appeared at her side, grinning. "Maya, this is Daniel. He's an old friend from college. You two should talk." Daniel. His handshake was warm, his smile slow and genuine. No rehearsed lines, no nervous fumbling, just presence. They started talking, and conversation flowed effortlessly about books, about travel, about the ridiculousness of New York dating culture. He asked questions and listened, really listened, as if her words mattered. He wasn't rushing to impress, wasn't filling the silence with ego. As the night stretched on, they drifted toward the quieter edge of the rooftop. The city skyline glowed behind them, and Maya felt that strange, electric ease as if she'd known him forever. By the time the party wound down, neither wanted the night to end. He walked her home, and on the sidewalk beneath her apartment, he looked at her with a steady gaze. "Maya," he said softly, "I feel like I've been waiting to meet you." Before she could reply, he kissed her, slow, unhurried, full of promise. And when she finally pulled away, breathless, she knew this was different. Daniel didn't rush her. That was the first thing Maya noticed. Over the next few days, they texted, met for dinner, wandered through bookstores, and sat for hours in little coffee shops, learning the contours of each other's minds. Every time they said goodbye, the air between them crackled with restraint, with desire simmering just beneath the surface. When he finally came to her apartment one late Friday night, it felt inevitable. The moment the door closed behind them, his hands found her waist, pulling her into a kiss that stole her breath. They moved toward the bedroom slowly, shedding clothes between kisses, laughter spilling between gasps of hunger. By the time she lay back on her bed, Daniel hovered above her, eyes dark with desire, but still patient, still asking with his gaze if she was ready. She nodded, and then he began. His mouth traced her neck, her collarbone, the curve of her breasts. His hands explored with curiosity, as though she was a map he intended to learn by heart. Maya shivered as he worked his way lower, anticipation flooding her veins. This was the moment, The moment so many others had fumbled, rushed, ignored. Her heart pounded as he paused between her thighs, looking up at her with a question in his eyes, as if asking for permission. When she whispered yes, he smiled, and then his mouth was on her. The first touch sent her arching off the bed, a cry slipping past her lips. It wasn't just his technique, it was his devotion. He wasn't doing this as a prelude or a checkbox. He was savoring her, losing himself in the rhythm of her pleasure. Every flick of his tongue, every change in pace was attuned to her. He listened to her body like a musician listens to music, adjusting, building, drawing her higher and higher. She tangled her fingers in his hair, gasping his name, and he only pressed closer, hungrier for every sound she made. For the first time, Maya didn't feel the need to guide, to explain, to hold back. He knew. Somehow he knew. Her climax came like a wave, crashing through her with a force that left her trembling, her voice breaking on his name. And still, he didn't stop, he drew it out, holding her there, letting her drown in the intensity of it until she begged for mercy. When he finally kissed his way back up her body, his mouth slick with her, she pulled him into her arms, whispering through ragged breaths, "No one's ever made me feel like that." He looked at her then, his eyes burning with both lust and tenderness. "Get used to it," he murmured. The night unfolded in waves, slow, fierce, tender, wild. They made love until the city outside her window grew quiet, until dawn began to soften the skyline. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't feel the ache of disappointment afterward. Instead, she felt whole. This was what she had waited for. This was what she had dreamed of. Her Mr. Big wasn't a fantasy anymore. He was here, in her bed, in her life, worshipping her in every way that mattered. The morning after, Maya woke in Daniel's arms. Sunlight spilled across her sheets, painting his face in gold. He was still asleep, his breath steady against her hair, his arm heavy across her waist, as if he was afraid she might slip away. She studied him quietly, the faint stubble on his jaw, the softness that contradicted his broad, commanding frame. Most of all, she studied how safe she felt. For years, mornings after had meant disappointment, detachment, or the silent question of what now. But with Daniel, there was no question. She didn't just want him for the night. She wanted him for mornings, for years, for a lifetime. Over the weeks that followed, their connection only deepened. He called when he said he would. He showed up on time, every time. When she had a bad day at work, he brought her Thai food and listened without trying to fix everything. When he had long nights at his architecture firm, she brought coffee and sat with him, quietly reading while he sketched. It wasn't just the little gestures. It was how he looked at her, always with that same steady intensity, as if she were the center of his world. And in bed, in bed he never faltered. Every time, he approached her body with the same reverence as that first night. Sometimes slow and languid, sometimes wild and consuming, but always with her pleasure as his compass. He didn't just give her orgasms. He gave her trust, surrender, the sense of being cherished in her most vulnerable form. One evening in late autumn, they sat on his balcony overlooking the city. The air was crisp, the skyline glowing in amber light. She was curled against him, sipping red wine when he spoke quietly. "You know what I think?" "What?" she asked, smiling. "I think we're not supposed to work this well together. It doesn't feel real." She laughed. "Why not?" He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Because I've never had this before. Someone who gets me. Someone who challenges me. Someone who—" He hesitated, his eyes softening. "Someone who makes me want to be better." Her heart clenched. She wanted to tell him everything, the years of searching, the disappointments, the dream she thought was impossible until him. Instead, she kissed him, long and deep, pouring her truth into the press of her lips. "Daniel," she whispered when they finally broke apart. You are real. And you're mine. Months turned into a year, and their bond only grew stronger. They traveled, they fought, they laughed, they made love until dawn. They learned each other's flaws and embraced them. His stubbornness, her impatience. They weren't perfect, but together they were unstoppable. One night, as they lay tangled in bed, she traced circles on his chest and thought about the promise she had made to herself years ago. She had vowed to marry only for true love. She had vowed never to settle, never to accept less than the full match of heart, mind, and body. And now, here he was, her Mr. Big, the man who saw her, who listened, who gave, who matched her in ways that mattered most. She smiled in the dark, whispering softly against his skin, "You're my big love." Daniel tightened his arms around her, kissing the top of her head. "And you're mine, forever." And for the first time, Maya's dream wasn't a dream anymore. It was her life.